Hello, hello to yet another non-readings video. A video about stories, about books. It's a look back and also a look ahead. But first and foremost, and most importantly, a happy new year to all of you. May your 2022 be filled with love and happiness and health and curiosity and wonder. This project, I Read Books, is now about 20 months old, and I think New Year's Day is a good point in time to make a little retrospective and also give a little outlook into the future. Of course, I didn't accomplish even remotely what I had planned for 2021. The reasons were numerous. One very big reason was simply work, which became exhausting to an extent that I never experienced before. I've been working for that company for now more than 20 years. But what had been going on in the last year was just crazy. And I don't really want to talk about work, but just for you, maybe a bit to understand. I work in the evenings, but I had to work overtime for so many days, came home very late at night. So my readings, I usually do them in before noon, upload them to YouTube, post them, scheduled. But I overslept so often because I was so exhausted. So I even had to drop down significantly on my readings. And you probably realize that I only post every other day instead of every day. But yeah, and I think it might stay this way. There also had been a couple of family-related things, which also were very quite time-consuming and quite nerve-wracking to put it this way. But no, let's not talk about that. Let me say one thing, and I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. Let me say a big and heartfelt thank you to all of you who have been following along. Some of you since even the earliest beginnings of this project. Some of you who hopped in along the way, some who here and there drop by, some who quote unquote just listen, some who leave a note here and there, some who send a thumbs up here and there. I really honestly appreciate each and every one of you, and I do not take this for granted. And this is not just curtsy, I really mean it. Over the now about 20 months of doing this, I got some wonderful messages of encouragement from people who told me that these readings helped them through tough times, and others who told me that my readings helped them understand the books or certain chapters of books much better, or even at all. And others just quote unquote simply felt entertained, and they told me that, and I cannot even put in words how much this means to me. For many of us, the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, were not the easiest of years. So many things happened, and I feel that a lot of us, me included, are plain exhausted, physically and mentally drained. And if what I do here can be a bit of relief and maybe a distraction, then it is more than I could have ever hoped for. Okay, with that having said, let me do a brief retrospective. So far, I posted readings of 12 books, of novels and novelettes. I started with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. This was meant to be a one-time thing. I just thought, okay, I want to read this book. I need a bit of distraction. I want to kind of force myself to push through this book. And so I posted the readings YouTube. And this book by L. Frank Baum is just a wonderful story, and it's certainly this is not the last L. Frank Baum book that I read or will read on this channel. I had a wonderful suggestion by Kurt concerning a different L. Frank Baum book that I wanted to read even before Christmas, but I mentioned it. Work was just, and also family was just too much. It just simply didn't work out. But yeah, Wonderful Wizard of Oz wasn't the last L. Frank Baum book on this channel. After I finished The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and I realized I want to continue this reading thing frequently, I said, okay, I want to read a book that I always wanted to read, never read it. And so I read Moby Dick, and Moby Dick became sort of my Moby Dick, this monster, this Leviathan of a book. It was really brought me to the limits. I have to say this. And it wasn't just once that I thought about stopping, but I kind of sort of pushed through. And I'm glad that I did, not for the sake of pushing through, but because this is just an amazing book. And I'm really super happy to see still people listening to chapters of this book and people commenting on my readings here and there. And I'm really super happy and super glad that my reading helps some of you to discover this amazing piece of writing. After that, or while reading Moby Dick, for me to give this whole project a bit of a lighthearted spin again, I started reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which I also thoroughly enjoyed reading, and I really enjoyed the reading part of this because I was able to do some voices, and I really realized that I enjoy doing voices, even though I don't think that I'm a natural in doing voices. But this was just a fun book to read, and it's really, not really a lot of depth in there, at least not nowadays. I think back in the days when this book was published, a lot of people got the references that are now lost in time for us, I guess. Then I started to rekindle my love for the work of Jules Verne by reading From the Earth to the Moon, and it's just a beautiful book. It's a wonderful, funny book, clever book, with so many cool characters and so much witticism in the book that I really have to say, and I want to say, and I need to say that Jules Verne is still one of my favorite authors of all times. Then I read a double-barreled detective story by Mark Twain, a novelette, which, as it turned out, is a spoof, a satire based on A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which was the next book I read, because I realized I never read A Study in Scarlet. I read tons of Sherlock Holmes short stories, but never a Study in Scarlet, so that was the natural thing to do. I really enjoyed reading that as well, even though I found it quite hard to read. Arthur Conan Doyle has a very specific style of writing, or had a very specific style of writing, that I found quite tough to approach, but it was an interesting book to read, and I really am glad to have read it, because it was kind of the grandfather of all the mystery detective stories that we all know, even though, of course, Arthur Conan Doyle was not the first one to write mystery detective stories. The actual father of the mystery detective story was, of course, Edgar Allan Poe. After A Study in Scarlet, I read yet another Jules Verne novel, Around the World in 80 Days, which was, or is, I think, one of my favorite readings so far that I did, because I just simply adore this story. I love this story, and I hardly ever felt so immersed in a story than with this book. It's a wonderful book, and it just again made me realize how much of an amazing writer Jules Verne was. Then I read Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. Fascinating book, funny book, social criticism, satire, humor packed in a time travel story. Wonderful. Also quite, I think, hard to understand in parts for us today, because a lot of the references are not really clear, at least not, or were not really clear, at least not to me. But nevertheless, a great book. A great book. And then after I finished that, I started to read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, which I was really surprised by, because it doesn't really have a lot to do with the movies that we know, right? The movies are very, very different, focus on very different aspects of the book. The book itself is amazingly written, beautifully written book. Some of the most beautiful writing that I ever experienced. Not so sure whether the story itself convinced me, but for me it wasn't about the book. It wasn't about the story itself, but rather about the writing. And this is just one of the most outstandingly written books of all times. Then I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, also a novelette by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was also a fantastic book, great book to read. Comparatively, I found it a bit hard to get into the book, but then it was kind of an easy read for me to understand. I found it a bit hard to read from the way Stevenson wrote. Sometimes the sentence structures were not really very clear to me, but still, great book. Loved the book. And after I finished Robert Louis Stevenson's The Curious Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I went back again to Jules Verne and read A Journey to the Center of the Earth, which was also just the joy to read. I can't put it any differently. Currently, I'm in the process of reading Dracula by Bram Stoker, and I'm blown away by this story. It's just, and I was surprised to realize I never read the novel. I watched, of course, many of the Dracula movies, never read the novel. And I realized that there's a Dracula or a vampire short story that I once started years ago with thinking that it's the novel, but I never found my access to the story, and I stopped reading that. And now I realize it wasn't the book. It wasn't the novel Dracula, whatever. So Dracula is just, I think, one of the best books so far even, and I'm just about one third through, one of the best books I've ever read. So fantastic book. Thoroughly enjoy reading this book. And I can't wait for making my summary at the end of the book, even though I don't even want to finish or be finished, because reading this book is so much joy. Of course, you can find all these readings in playlists to listen to the parts in order. And as you might have realized, I stopped doing an introduction to each chapter because I realized, well, if people want to listen to or watch these readings in order, it might be distracting to always have a hello type of thing at the beginning of each part of the reading. So I dropped doing that. In 2021, I started doing the Sunday poem. Let me start this chapter of this project, or start talking about this chapter of this project. And so far I posted 32 readings of poems by various authors. I try to have a bit of a variety in themes and topics and authors. And I have to say that this is super fun and also very challenging. The process reading the poems to reading the novel chapters is of course very different, and it gives me a lot of possibilities to experiment. And there are a lot of ideas about what to do with this side project, how this will evolve. Side project on this channel, of course, right? And I think there will be some surprises in 2022. There are some poetry readings that are different than others or very different to others. So I have tons of ideas, and I just have to find the right time and the right poem to do this or try this stuff out. I also started doing the very infrequent Saturday short story. I still aim for 2 short stories per month. Probably will not accomplish this very often, but still, it's also a side project on this channel, which is a lot of fun for me and also gives lots of variety to this channel, I think. So far, I posted 4 short stories, and I'm really curious whether this will catch on with you wonderful people out there. I think so. Over time, as soon as there are more different types of short stories, there will be people finding this project as well. And I'm aware, because these are, of course, a bit longer, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that not everyone can sit down or listen to 20 or 30 minutes videos or watch 20 or 30 minutes videos, but they're there, so you can go back there whenever you want to. Also, of course, it's all organized in playlists. Other than the novel readings, the poetry and the short story readings are kind of rehearsed, so there are no slips of the tongue in them, and there's also some post-processing, both in image and audio. And there will also be some experiments and surprises in 2022, at least planned. So, yeah, other than those surprises, what is going to happen this year, 2022? What's the plan? The plan is to continue. As simple as that. There's still some non-readings videos to be posted. The second part of my FAQ video is still in the making. I will be talking about my sound setup. There were questions about my light setup, and there will be a video on my sound setup, though this is still in the making. I want to make this a bit more informative and want to give you a bit more information than I gave you in the lighting video. So this will probably still take a bit until it's done. If you have any questions, no matter what they are about, drop them in the comments. I'll gladly, happily answer all your questions if I can. Another thing that I will probably be doing a bit more this year is to make the odd book review here and there, because the one that I did so far was really a very enjoyable thing to do. I really like doing this, and it was kind of a curiosity, I guess, because this book is not in print anymore. So, but on the other hand, it kind of fits, right? This blog, because this project, this channel, because I'm only reading old texts mostly, right? Okay, which books are planned? Which novels are planned? Definitely there will be some more Jules Verne books. I just plain love his work, as you might have guessed already. And while I have already read many of his books, I haven't read them in English. So I can read each of his books for this project. Since I try to put in a bit of a variety of books, there will be some more Mark Twain books in the future, definitely. There will be some other more humorous texts as well. I will probably be putting in some by H.P. Lovecraft, because his work is really very, very important for the horror genre and for the maybe mystery genre, if you want to call it like that, fantasy genre. So there will be some H.P. Lovecraft, I guess. I still have to explore a lot of his work. I'm not really very H.P. Lovecraft savvy. I know a bit, of course, like we all do. Yeah. And there are still Alice books to read and Oz books to read. So we all haven't seen or heard the last of Alice's adventures and the Oz books. And of course, I also have some cool short stories in store for you. I plan on doing a bit more visual and audio experiments for the poetry readings and the short story readings. The novel readings will stay the way they were and are, saying, right, me just sitting down and reading, no fancy things. So, there are two huge things that I planned and that I have in the back of my mind for 2022. Number one, I will sooner or later start a second channel on which I will read German texts, as I am a native German speaker, and I'm really looking forward to this. There were quite a lot of people who asked me whether I would want to do this, want to read German texts as well, and yes, I want to. And I just had to find my way. I don't want to do the same thing as I do here on a different channel, right? So I had to find, or have to still find, my way of doing basically the same thing, but in a different way. But there will be definitely a German channel over the course of this year, if things turn out the way I planned them, which they never do, but I still, I'm pretty sure that there will be a German channel in the not too far future with German text. And number two, and this is for me a really huge thing, doesn't really have to do anything with YouTube. At least I don't see any way yet. I will continue writing my own stories. I wrote, or had been writing, or have been writing. I haven't been writing too much lately. My own short story. It's a series of short stories that kind of belong together and are still separate from each other. And I will continue writing those. And I will also, since this is kind of the way how this whole thing here started, at least in my head, I recorded them, and I will re-record. Probably I will probably re-record the old ones, because I listened to the old recordings, which are now like 5-6 years old or something, and it was a bit embarrassing to listen to them. So I will probably redo them and continue writing them. I don't think that they fit on this channel, or will fit on this channel. This channel is about something very different. I don't know yet where to put them, but for those of you who are interested, I will let you know, of course. You will find them, and you will know where to find them as soon as there's something to show or to listen to. So yeah, I think that was quite a bit, right? Again, wishing you all a fantastic 2022. See you, read you, take care, please. Stay safe and healthy. Healthy, right? Stay healthy, safe and healthy. This one's for today. Bye-bye. Till next time.